Is one AFC East Week 16 here about to become a bum in Week 17? Which players coming off the COVID list should you give pause before starting on Sunday? And is one active 2021 first-round FFPC fantasy pick a must-bench in championship week? Plus, the owner of both the 5th and 7th place teams in the championship round of the 2021 Football Guys Players Championship, Bobby Heytota, joins us to talk about how he got his only two high-stakes teams this high in the standings this year, which second-tier tight ends have to be started this week, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Farrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your FFPC Championship Week High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour starts now.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now listening to the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by MyFFPC.com, with your hosts Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here's Eric Balkman and Farrell Elliott.
Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you to the Quiet Hollers. Remember to check out their music at quiethollers.com. Greetings and salutations to all the Balkaholics and Farelliacs tuning in on this special Thursday night edition of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Welcome to the latest episode. It's presented by MyFFPC.com. I am, of course, your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman. My co-host is indeed the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, one Farrell Elliott. Farrell, we didn't have NFL fantasy football or NFL football tonight, so I thought it'd be appropriate that we keep the football theme going throughout this season, and we'll have an HSFF hour tonight and let everybody go party their brains out tomorrow night for New Year's Eve.
I think that's a brilliant idea, Balky. We know a great group of guys that know how to party and you know, use their brains for it, party their brains out, and then return to their brain to fantasy football where it really, really belongs, because there's a lot of things to talk about. There's a lot of things to consider and some very important moves. You know, anybody can still win the FFPC. Anybody that can challenge that's in the top 50, 60, 70 in the KFFSC. We've got great opportunities for all kinds of players this weekend, and I hope you're one of them here in Kentucky.
Yeah, doing my best. I don't think I'm in contention for any of the main, like the checkered flag, run to daylight, or the main event. But I think I'm in.
You're a defending champion there, Balky.
Well, I realize that. But I would say, I looked at my Kentucky teams earlier this week. I think I'm in the thick of it in 6 or 7 of them to win the thing. I won't win all 6 or all 7, whatever it is. But I got a good shot in more than a few, so I'm excited to see how that plays out in Week 17 here. And coming up on tonight's show, we're going to do just that. We're going to help you set those Week 17 lineups. We'll prepare you as best as we can for Championship Week. We'll feature our thoughts, what Farrell and I think of the suddenly crowded Detroit Lions backfield, which young NFC receiver is due for a massive final week, and then Bobby Heytota will drop by and sit down with us. He's an owner of only 2 FFPC teams this year, the only 2 teams he drafted with the FFPC, and one of them's in 5th and one of them's in 7th in the Football Guys Players Championship with just 1 week to go. He actually was the overall leader his 5th place team was the overall leader last week. He slips to 5th, but he gets his other one up to 7th. So he's got 2 top 10 teams, and we're going to talk about him. We're going to talk why he didn't get more teams this year. Think of that. What he could have been. Yeah. It's so interesting because so I just talked about Bobby Heytota. John Terry, former guest of this show on that Road of his High Stakes Lowdown, is in 9th and 10th place in the Football Guys Players Championship. But I think the most shocking thing, Bobby Heytota's story is pretty shocking. But the one thing I noticed, and I could be getting this wrong, as far as what places. But former guest of the show, Dan Thomas, has a team in second place overall in the FFPC main event, and I think he is in fourth place in the Football Guys Players Championship. So he is a top four team in both contests. Farrell, there's a non-zero chance that Dan Thomas could win $1 million this weekend with the FFPC. We thought Abib Agbatova winning the FPC 2 years in a row was unbelievable. Dan Thomas winning both these tournaments with as big as the field has ever been before would certainly be shocking. A lot of fun stuff to root for. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the gentleman in the chat room tonight, the official Ivy League professor of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, Hudson Kern-Reeve, hanging out. He is in 6th, 20th, and 60th in the main event. So he has a top 6 team, a top 20 team, and a top 60 team in the FFPC main event going into championship week. Good luck, Professor. We hope that you make it a very lucrative year here in 2021. And actually, in honor of Kern, before I get to anything else, he has a question, Farrell. He wants to know how sneaky a sleeper is Jordan Howard as of this moment. When you look at the situation with the Eagles right now, obviously we know Miles Sanders is out. Jordan Howard, I think, returned to practice today, which was a good sign for him. I don't know if he's that sneaky of a sleeper, but I will say this: if the game script follows where the Eagles have this lead in Washington, he's the guy that they're going to pound in the second half, and not Boston Scott. I don't necessarily know if he's going to be a championship winner for you, but I think there is some value there. What do you think about Jordan Howard in Washington this week?
Wow. I would have to know the circumstances that got Hudson Kern-Reeve to this position, and then why the professor has to be considering Jordan Howard over the players that got him to this position. Now, I know why. I think it's COVID. The Washington team is good coaching staff. It's going to get what players and what talent they have left ready to play. They're not going to be walked over. You've got a quarterback that wants to assert his run game, and you've got a passing attack that's coming together against a team that just gave up a lot of air yards to the Cowboys. I think that if you need if you need a 12-carry running back who's not going to catch any passes and may get a touchdown, if that's going to make a difference for you to win this championship, then Jordan Howard, that's what I think he's going to give you.
Farrell, I'll tell you this. It sounds like such a resounding confirmation of Jordan Howard for you there. But with the great Southern treatment, the great Southern coats of paint you put over that, once we peel that back, I think we truly know how you feel about Jordan Howard this week in Week 17. Okay, so moving on, I do want to mention to everybody here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, coming up on tonight's show, if you want to connect with us, I want you to do so at HSFF Hour, at Eric Balkman on Twitter. Of course, check out the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship at KFFSC.com. 347-426-3682 is the number to call. 347-GAME-OVA. High Stakes Fantasy Football at gmail.com is where to reach us. If you have any questions, we'll get to the tweets, the emails, and all the chat room questions in the fantasy feedback segment as we close out the show. And we close out 2021, final show of 2021 tonight. I want to thank our audio engineer, my best friend Bryce, and of course our producer and mutual friend Rob. You can register for the 2021-2022 world famous FFPC Playoff Challenge, as well as the Football Guys Playoff Challenge right now at myffpc.com. That FFPC Playoff Challenge, $500,000 grand prize, 12-player lineup. You pick one player per NFL team. 4 flexes in your lineup this year, just $200 to enter. It's limited to 7,250 teams. The deadline is indeed January 15th at 4:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Same thing with the Football Guys Playoffs Challenge. Only $35 to enter that one. Still can win a $100,000 grand prize. That's at myffpc.com. Rotoviz.com/podcast is where my conversation with Ken Ford took place. You can check that out. Ken Ford, who was in the 7th place in the FFPC main event coming up on the final week. A lot of great conversation with Ken there. A guy who's had a lot of success playing Dynasty as well as Redraft in the FFPC. Moving on, let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Lamar Jackson is certainly the story there, Farrell, as we look at how He was limited in practice yesterday. I believe he miss practice today? I don't know if it was a downgrade at all.
Yes.
He missed practice. Okay.
I believe we're looking at another Tyler Huntley start.
Yeah, and that was my question. That was my question here for anybody who had Lamar Jackson, who chose to back him up with Tyler Huntley in Week 17. We saw what Huntley did to a pretty good Green Bay Packers defense a couple of weeks ago, and this is a pretty talented guy coming out of the Pac-12 in Utah. How if you decided to back up Jackson and you have Huntley or like an also ran, not an also ran, but if you had like one of the standard backups that you would have at quarterback this week, maybe you're weighing Tyler Huntley or Kirk Cousins or Tua Tagovailoa or Ryan Tannehill or Mac Jones or any of those guys. How confident would you feel about Tyler Huntley with everything on the line, Farrell?
I would feel pretty good about Huntley. There's a stat that I saw this week. Lamar Jackson against the NFC is 10-2 in his starts over the last period. Now, it means to me that they don't see him as often as the AFC teams, and they don't have to plan for him as often. And what they're dealing with is truly the Baltimore offense. And Huntley can run this offense, and he can run it well. I was amazed when this player came out of Utah that he wasn't drafted, and I was even more impressed with the front office there at Baltimore that found a way to get a quarterback to come back up Lamar, who has a similar skill set. Certainly not the same skill set. He's certainly not as a developed player as Lamar, but he brings skills that can make the other players work. And for anyone that's listening to this, the other player that has to work, and I hope we talk more about him tonight, is the tight end Mark Andrews. And, we saw what Andrews did with Huntley. You can expect more of that, and you can expect the receivers to be serviced adequately against the Rams, where the Ravens will have to score to keep up with that team.
Farrell, you mentioned Mark Andrews.
Pass rush blocking.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, he can, no question. You mentioned Mark Andrews. I saw this on Twitter. I can't remember who put it out. Mark Andrews, most catches by any tight end in the NFL this year, the most receiving yards of any tight end in the NFL this year, and he is tied for the league lead in touchdown catches by a tight end. Who else? Hunter Henry and Dawson Knox. We all saw that coming, right? But so next year, as we look to 2022 drafts in both the FFPC and KFFSC, is he the guy, if you're going to take the first tight end off the board, would it be Mark Andrews next year?
Smart people would, but he will go third next year. He'll supplant Pitts and Hawkinson, although he didn't do that this year. I certainly drafted him everywhere I could get it. At one point, I had in my first 30 teams that I drafted, and I understand many of these teams are the low-dollar classic teams and best ball teams, but I had him all over the rosters. And, of course, my dad had a great saying for it. He said, you can't stand prosperity. And so when I got to Las Vegas, I started thinking, I sure do have a lot of Andrews. Maybe I ought to look somewhere else in that fifth round. And so I could not stand the prosperity of Andrews, but I love where I do have him. It's a pleasure to watch him play every week. And he'll be my first tight end wherever he goes in the draft. That's where I'm going to go because I'm going to chase him. I'm going to follow him. I'm all in on Mark Andrews.
Yeah, great thing about him is no matter if it's Lamar Jackson or if it's Tyler Huntley, they're both looking for him downfield. So all good things for Mark Andrews going forward here. Good things, or better things at least this week for Ramondre Stevenson, as he is no longer on the COVID-19 list. He is back this week. Damien Harris had such a baller Week 16. Farrell, if you have Damien Harris, because a lot of people, myself included, I wasn't looking at him as a second running back. I was looking at it as a flex in most of my leagues last week. Some leagues I started on, some leagues I didn't. And now I look at it this week, you have Ramondre Stevenson coming back. Does that put Damien Harris' startability into jeopardy for you? I mean, if you're going for a championship this week, are you concerned about, Harris was kind of a borderline flex for me last week. Now Stevenson's back. Do I trust what I saw with my eyes in Week 16 and still roll him out there in Week 17? Or could this be like a massive letdown from what we saw from him last week?
If I'm in this situation, I'm putting my money behind Damien Harris, and I'm rolling with it. This is a team that last couple of weeks, the losses that they've experienced have hurt them greatly to the core. I believe they're going to pull it in a little bit and target and concentrate on their playmakers that have been successful for them throughout the season. Consequently, if that's what the team does, that's what the fantasy players can do. I think this team has to get focused, get back on the winning track, get ready to make a playoff run. You get Damien Harris going, he's the back that's going to do that. Stevenson's a great change of pace back. I don't think I want to have him as my guy, as my number one guy, if I'm choosing between Stevenson and Harris. I saw some teams that were so embattled over the last few weeks with COVID that they had the pleasure of starting them both. And that could work too.
Speaking of COVID, Taysom Hill no longer on the COVID list as well. Trevor Siemian actually also got activated. So Ian Book, we hardly knew you as he goes back to being third string for New Orleans. And that was rough to watch. Taysom Hill against the Carolina Panthers, Farrell. Are you firing up Alvin Kamara? Quite frankly, are you firing up Taysom Hill as a starting quarterback this week, one week removed after being on that list last week?
I've never been able to get behind Taysom Hill. We've talked about it on the show, and it's. I would love to be proven wrong. Sometimes he just drops the ball right into the receiver, and you say, wow, look at that. Look at that arm talent. Look what he's doing. And then you see the next play you see, and you say, nah, this isn't going to be it. I think I said this last week, but it's very obvious. The offensive line for him is doing the job, but he won't play quarterback. He runs out of the pocket too soon. Wide receivers are getting open. Leads to a lot of frustrations on the Saints. So Taysom Hill coming back, what does that mean? He can keep him in the game. He's going to be obviously better than Siemian. He's going to be much, much better than Ian Book, God bless him. What he's going to do is he's going to give owners that have managed to be in a position to challenge and have Alvin Kamara. Not a lot of teams with Kamara are sitting in a position where they can do anything with it. We have a team in Kentucky. I think they're 22nd or 23rd. The Payne brothers have him. We have to go that far down to find a team with Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara has a 10-catch game this year versus Seattle sometime around Halloween. I remember that one. Now he gets the Panthers this weekend. He has 5 games. 5 games, Balky, this year where he carried the ball more than 20 times. And I don't have to go too far back in my memory to where I think Alvin Kamara actually scored 4 or was it 5 touchdowns in one game and delivered championships to fantasy players. That's your wild card here. And
it was 6.
You have
it was
to be
6
excited.
Touchdowns.
Yeah. 6 touchdowns.
6. Yeah,
I think I was playing against him that year, and I quit counting at some point. But what a fantastic situation to have if you have Alvin Kamara to be getting Taysom Hill back.
Yeah, I would not have been able to win the KFFSC checkered flag last year without Kamara's 6 touchdown performance on Christmas Day. One of the best Christmas gifts I've ever gotten in Kentucky, certainly. By the way, Kamara owned in fewer than 6% of main event championship round teams. He's owned in fewer than 8% of Football Guys Players Championship teams as well. We do have Bobby Heytota coming up. He's in the green room. He's waiting. He's ready. The last thing I want to do before we talk to the gentleman who has 2 teams in the top 10 of the FPC championship round is this Lions running back situation. DeAndre Swift is back from his shoulder injury. He is indeed practicing in full. They get the Seattle Seahawks this week. Swift has missed the last 5 games, and he's coming back to a team that not only has Jamal Williams, but Netflix, Craig Reynolds, has looked pretty good the last few weeks as well. So my question here, Farrell, is if you're lucky enough to get to the championship round, or maybe you're playing in Kentucky where you got to, one of the ancillaries, right, where you got to the playoffs and you weren't really using Swift, but now you can deploy him. How do you feel about DeAndre Swift as one of your flexes in Week 17, knowing that the presence of Jamal Williams, knowing that the presence of Craig Reynolds could actually derail your fantasy hopes?
Seattle up at home in a snowstorm and a 10-point lead on Chicago Bears completely caved defensively last week, and it was a disappointing thing to watch. And I don't like to play fantasy players because they're from a negative perception. In other words, I'm going to play Swift because Seattle was so bad. But, yes, Seattle was so bad. And I don't think NFL teams and their players mail it in, but This has got a lot of feeling for a game that Detroit's got something to play for. They're playing for a lot of fun. They got some young guys that want to have their jobs and want to come back. They're sort of in sync with the coaches right now. I could make a case for it, and I don't know who I would like him better than. But I would not be ashamed to start this player. And so, what do you have in this player? You have a player that can score from anywhere on the field, especially against a defense that may not feel they have a lot to play for in Seattle. I like it, Balky. I think it's a good idea.
I only own him in, I think, one league, and it is a KFFSC ancillary league. I do plan on starting him this week, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully he gets into the end zone, maybe gets a few catches along the way as well. Let's bring in tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen. He got into fantasy back in the day when he drafted Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson his first year. He's been a Matthew Stafford fan ever since, usually picking him 3 rounds too early every single year. However, maybe 2021 is the payback year for all the too soon jokes on draft days past, as he has his only 2 FFPC teams firmly entrenched in the top 10 overall in the 2021 Football Guys Players Championship with just 1 week to go in the championship round. Please welcome onto the show the manager of the 5th and 7th place teams in the 2021 FPC, Bobby Heytota. Bobby, an early Happy New Year to you. Thanks for coming on, and just tell us, what have the last couple of weeks been like for you, going from the leader in Football Guys Players Championship to now having 2 teams in the top 7?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Thanks for having me on, and happy early New Year to you guys as well. Yeah, it's funny. I had a 200-point run with RG on the first week. And, my other team was way back, and then then RG has like a 150-ish or so, and my second team did when I had a 211 or so. So right into the fray there. And I know you guys were saying that Ian Book had a really rough game, but if you had Miami D, he had a beautiful game, and that's exactly what I needed. After I saw Dallas decimate Washington, I dialed Miami in there, and they really kept me in the thick of things.
I think that was a brilliant addition to the lineup because it was Miami.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've had them since
a couple
week
of,
1.
What I try to do a couple of weeks before is just look ahead to see matchup wise. And sometimes it ends up working out if I'm still playing, then I get a good matchup. So not that I knew that Book was going to be starting there, but it just happened to work out that I had a couple of them on my bench.
Bobby, I forgot to ask you. So you're in New York, right?
Yeah. Yep.
What are you doing for a living out there right now?
I work for a startup mortgage originator in New York City. Got
it. And okay, so with that type of work, has it given you the type of time that you need to not only analyze the 2 lineups that you're going to be setting forth, but have you looked at the teams above you? Have to see what they could deploy? Are you trying to be different? How are you planning on catching these teams? How much time have you spent not only analyzing your teams, but the teams above you in the standings as well?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a lot of the guys who are at the top of the charts here have a lot of similar players. You're going to see the Mark Andrews everywhere. You're going to see Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, Cooper Kupp. So everybody has some players that are the same as others. Who would have thought it? But everybody, I think the top 5 guys other than me have Dallas D, and they're going against Arizona. So that could be a place to pick up some. But then there's always going to be I have the Conklin or Chase Claypool, one slot where I need to make a decision there, and those are the ones where, it's either going to win it for you or it's not.
Well, I'll help you with that decision, Bobby, if you need.
Thank you.
I just want you to know that. I'll be glad to get on the Claypool bandwagon. I've never been there before. I've never really been a Claypool No, actually, yeah, Claypool's your guy. I want to talk to you about this fifth place team.
Okay.
You know, and I don't want to talk about the team so much as the players that are on it, but I want to talk about the sense of where you are and how you got there and who you got there with. I come in our league in Kentucky every year. One of the greatest things we do, we kick it off with an auction, and you can see Balky playing with Leroy. I think that's no, Balky, you're playing with Kurt, and
Yep.
Dave and Leroy are always playing, and it becomes so special because the partnership of playing. I always love the partnership teams. It's who you're going to win this money and have this success and enjoy this competition with along the way. You know, so do you want to tell us a little bit about the unique aspect of this team a little bit?
Yeah. So when I was courting my my then girlfriend in New York, I'd met her dad a couple of times, and we instantly kind of bonded about over fantasy football, and I sent an email and said he was upstate New York in Syracuse. I was in the city, and I wanted to go and ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. So I said, mind if I come up there and we have a couple beers and talk football? And he said, sure. So I went up there, and like 3 hours into it, we're still talking about football. And finally, he kind of like puts his glass down and just looks at me and goes, "Listen, I love talking football with you, but you didn't come up here to do it for 3 hours. What do you got to ask me?" And then I asked if I can marry his daughter, and that's the history. So so then I got him involved in FFPC. I bought him an entry into I think it was the Football Guys, and RG Wiskins was his team, and I had my team, and unfortunately he passed away a couple of years ago, and this is going to be the way it is going forward, where I always play RG Wiskins, and I'll always play my team too. So it means a lot.
Yeah, and that's special stuff. Obviously, family first, and to have a even if this team does fall short 2 weeks beforehand, to be leading the whole competition, Bobby is incredible, and hopefully it works out for one of these teams. But obviously, I'm sure if you had your pick and you knew one of them was going to take it down, you'd want the RG Wiskins to be the one that wins the whole thing. So good luck there with that.
Thank you.
And I do want to let's talk a little bit about one of the things that I have been excited about when I see on the different various apps or whatever, the services that I subscribe to about player news. I get so excited when I see a player that I have, that I'm counting on, has been taken off the COVID list and he's playing. But now we've seen Mike Evans gets off the COVID list, and the beat reporters are saying he looks really fatigued in practice. Tyreek Hill on Wednesday was complaining about how fast he was getting just worn down in practice. And so now you have a situation where, you were counting on, or at least the last time I looked at this lineup, you had Brandon Cooks in your starting lineup. He is now off the COVID list. How nervous are you about deploying him with everything on the line this week?
I feel like he got off pretty early. I don't know when. I think Tyreek Hill literally got off like the day before. And, I mean, he had 2 catches in the first, 5 minutes and then never touched the ball again. Believe me, I know, I watched. I think Cooks got off pretty early. I mean, is there another guy on my, would I trust somebody else to slot in there for him? Probably not. I know, with, I'm just looking at my, this might be maybe a Conklin or something, but yeah, I mean, I got to roll the dice with Cooks. I mean, he's going to be, if someone's going to put up numbers, it's going to be him as opposed to Tevin Coleman or someone else like that.
I think Cooks has got a fantastic rapport with the quarterback, and I think the quarterback that actually had to take some time off to give Balky was number 2 quarterback. Was it Buffalo? Now at Houston.
Tyrod Taylor.
Yes, double T, Tyrod Taylor. Taylor got his shot and it had a very, very difficult time playing. And Mills has come back.
Yeah.
Looks very different. The team looks better. One running back has been more running back with Rex. So I'm impressed with this team. And I think that would be an interesting decision for you. You said you have Andrews. That's a put it in and love it at the tight end position. But you mentioned Conklin, and now there's a player that when I first start thinking about it, I say, okay, this is a case of overthinking. Do I want to flex Conklin? Because I really want to, especially with Thielen out, and especially the fact I've got to watch the team and number 17, the other receiver. I'm not particularly impressed with the routes he runs. I think without Thielen on the field, he becomes a lesser receiver. I like what Conklin does around the goal line. Cousins is a top 10, top 12 fantasy quarterback any way you cut it. What is your thoughts? You've already brought his name up, so obviously you're thinking along those lines too. What are you going to do with Conklin with so much on the table here?
Yeah, Conklin's an interesting one, and he's kind of like I'd say, if you do the DraftKings and all that stuff and you pick all your good guys and then you have like $300 left and you have to pick like one guy and you pick him, and that's the guy who will make you win. If he, like, I remember it was like Pringle for one game, like had a touchdown and, I ended up winning or something. And so Conklin could be that guy. So my real decision, because I'm going to play Cooks because I'd kick myself if I didn't. It's really going to be the Conklin or Claypool decision. And it's good because they both play late. Well, Claypool on Monday and Conklin the late game on Sunday. So kind of can see where I'm at on things. I mean, I think Claypool has the higher ceiling, although he has been in the basement every game. And I dislike him as a player, and I also don't like any of the Steelers. Well, Najee Harris I like, but I think Ben Roethlisberger should have stopped playing football 16 games ago. But I'm going to say, I think it's also supposed to be a really, really bitter, cold game in Green Bay. So I don't know if I want to play Conklin in that or not. So that's kind of one of the decisions I'm going to have to make. But I'm leaning towards Claypool at the moment.
Well, Farrell's going to tell you that's a smart decision. Farrell has never seen a Chase Claypool matchup he has not liked in his career. So certainly he's a big fan of that decision. So, and what else is so great about this week too is, we have no Thursday night football, we have no Saturday football. We can wait until 1:00 on Sunday to make all these decisions, right? It's the most normal week. Thank you for that, especially with everything on the line. You don't have to make decisions where you don't want to have to make hedge decisions on Thursdays and Saturdays, and you won't have to do that this week. We're talking with Bobby Heytota, the 5th and 7th place team owner in the Football Guys Players Championship here after Week 16, heading into Week 17. We don't really talk about defenses a whole lot on this show, but I think the decision to start the correct defense gets amplified here in this 3-week sprint. You have a trio to choose from. You have Arizona this week on your team. They go to Dallas. You have Denver on your team as well. Denver is in L.A. against the Chargers. And then, of course, your heroes from last week, the Miami Dolphins, they're also on the road. They go to Tennessee. Have you made your choice here? Is it going to be the Dolphins? I mean, what's been the thought process here?
Yeah, the way I'm thinking about this is, Dallas has got a lot of firepower. Arizona has firepower. That's going to probably be a pretty high scoring game indoors. So I'm going to stay away from Arizona there. Dak and them have been looking pretty good. I feel like the Chargers are going to get back on their game against Denver. Denver being the best defense statistically of the three, but I just have a feeling that with Eckler back, I think the Chargers kind of hit their stride a little bit there. And, Miami coming off that game, got some confidence. It's outdoors. Tennessee has had a couple of good games, like this last game they had where Brown went for like a zillion yards and a couple touchdowns. It's definitely possible, but I think of these three, I'm gonna roll with Miami.
Rolling with the three defenses. Now, so it's great that we are big believers and agree on the Claypool issue. I look at this and I say, okay, we got a guy. I played a lot. I played more football guys teams this past year than I had previous years together. And, Balky has already congratulated me for having a team in the consolation. Thank you, Balky. But I looked at you, I said, why, this guy, he's got to have it. Look at these rosters. And then I look at one and I see where you have 5 tight ends. And I say, nobody ever had 5 tight ends except me. I said, so I got, this is another similarity that discovered here. Now, of these 5 tight ends, and you can tell the listeners who they are, but I've looked through them, and, I'll throw a couple of them out there. They were my guys. Everett, who we talked about glowingly, and then we're finally getting something of what we thought we might have got. Freiermuth, who I was all over early, and very, very happy about it, and it didn't take him long to get hot. But let's talk about what you've got to do this weekend, which one you've got to get in lineup. You've got Foster Moreau. I was a big Foster Moreau fan, knowing that he wouldn't get play unless Waller got hurt. Waller got hurt. I picked him up on Sunday morning, got 20 points out of him. I think you probably did too. And now you look at who you're going to start on this big money week for you. I wanted you to go back memory lane with me to the start of the year. If you look at the Indianapolis Colts, they were astonishingly bad against the pass early on in this season. And while they have shored up their defense at every position, they're still bad against the tight end. And you've got the Raiders and Colts lined up. So is your guy going to be Foster Moreau?
I think it's between Moreau and Everett. So the Colts they're in the basement against tight ends, and Detroit is not as bad, but pretty bad. And Everett looks like he's become Russell Wilson's like one of his 3 guys. So obviously he's got Lockett and Metcalf, but Everett's been consistent, and he's getting getting a decent amount of receptions. I don't know. Is Waller definitely out this week? Because I'm not seeing.
You.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything definitive, but I can tell you that just when he was getting over this injury, he gets placed on the COVID list, and that was yesterday. So I don't think he can come back to get cleared in time.
Yeah. So this is going to be a decision between Everett and Moreau. I like how Everett's got worked in, but Moreau, it's like last game, he had a great game, and I know, like you said, the Colts are they're very good on defense, but apparently against the tight ends, they're not as good. So I'm not sure who I'm going to go with, but we'll see.
Yeah, and Freiermuth obviously out of concussion protocol. That's a good sign as well. Now this is a decision that we were not a decision, but this is a situation we were talking about earlier. Miles Sanders is obviously out this week. Jordan Howard is probably a guy that you're going to consider along with Rex Burkhead, who had the big game against the Chargers. How seriously are you looking at either one of these guys, Bobby, in your lineup this week, given the situation in Philly and given the game that Rex Burkhead had against Los Angeles last week?
Yeah, the Rex Burkhead, if I win anything, I'm going to owe a lot to him for that week and that play. I don't think he's going to do that. I don't think he's going to do that again. That was it's like you play blackjack and you put your big bet down and you get blackjack, and then you pull it all back and then go back to your low betting. It's like you're not going to get blackjack on the next hand or whatever. So Rex Burkhead had a tremendous game. He'll make his way to the bench. if Jordan Howard plays and does not have any, like, I think he had a stinger and he's still kind of working back from that. And 2 years ago or a year ago, he had the same thing and it really kept him out for a while. So if it's going to be like a Boston Scott, Jordan Howard, like square dance, I don't know if I want to do that. But that's a good matchup. So if Jordan Howard is going to be, the primary back, I would definitely want to put him in there.
Yeah, I want to talk about some of the things that you're getting right. You've obviously got a lot of things right this year, and I want to hear the thing that you're most proud of. I like your blackjack analogy. But here in Kentucky, we've got an expression that you don't want to shoot the horse that won the race. And Rex Burkhead just won you the race. And now you're saying that you're going to leave Rex Burkhead standing on the sidelines. I don't know. That sounds like an unclerical thing to do.
The third leg of the relay. It's a four-person relay. He has to hand it off to somebody.
that may be the way to look at it. So yeah, let's talk about getting things right. Obviously, you did that this year, and I thought about this: who would my guy be that I got right? And it doesn't always have to be the guy that you draft early, or obviously anybody that picked Andrews got Andrews right. Anybody that picked Samuel with the Niners, wonderful pick. Who's the guy that you just really, really got right that made you very proud of your analysis and you're very fortunate to have him on your teams?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I always pick Stafford early. I always liked Stafford. He puts up great points, but I just like him as a leader and just a great quarterback. So getting him and having him, and I always want, like I said with Megatron, I always want to have like his counterpart, and I thought Kupp would be his guy. So that combo I was pretty happy with. And then Jonathan Taylor, I thought he showed a lot that he was going to be, the main man, like a kind of an Austin Eckler type for the Colts. So I knew I wanted to take him, I would, early, but, guys like some of the guys that you want, I always want to avoid anyone who's ever touched a New York team. So like Saquon, was off limits. Beckham off limits. Like anybody. Those were the guys that I wanted to steer clear of in the draft. But like Kupp, Taylor, and Stafford were the ones I really wanted to get.
Yeah, that's a good trio to get.
And obviously Fournette too. I thought Fournette, more and more at the end of the year, he just showed that he was going to be the guy, and he was tremendous all season. Obviously getting hurt, that stinks, but yeah, he was great too.
So did you ever, on the triumphant of guys that you mentioned, did you ever really reach for him? Did you ever take Kupp at the very beginning of the third round or late in the second round because you knew you wouldn't get him coming back to you? Did you ever do that kind of thing?
I did with I know I did with Stafford. I do that every year. I think I took Taylor pretty early this year. Yeah, so he was like more of a reach than I'm trying to think of who I would have passed up instead. But yeah, I definitely took him like probably early second round or maybe late first, like on the turn. But he was one that was a little bit earlier than all the like draft, all the predictions and whatnot. Right. Yeah.
To your point, Bobby, Leonard Fournette this season is the 8th most owned player in the FFPC main event championship round. Jonathan Taylor is number 4, and no surprise that the number 1 most owned player in both the Football Guys Players Championship and the FFPC main event championship rounds. It is the one, the only, the fantasy MVP, Cooper Kupp. So congratulations on getting your player evaluation right on him there. Let's get on to a couple of emails here for you, Bobby. Jim in our nation's capital writes, "Hi, Bobby. Would you start? I think I know the answer to this. Now that I just heard your philosophy on New York players, Hi, Bobby. Would you start Michael Carter over A.J. Dillon this week? Congrats on the FPC performance. Thank you for the email, and thank you for listening. Jim in D.C. A.J. Dillon is at home on Sunday night against the Minnesota Vikings. Michael Carter is actually going to be taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home. That is a negative game script. However, we found out Tevin Coleman on the COVID list today. So if you had to make that decision between A.J. Dillon and Michael Carter, which way would you lean, man?
I would be, I'd feel like at some point the Jets are going to have to throw the ball quite a bit to beat the Tampa Bay Bucks. So I don't know how much Carter is going to get, how many carries he's going to get. If in the first two series, if they're not scoring touchdowns, they might be airing it out the rest of the game. So I would go with Dillon, especially if it's going to be a snowy ground and pound game. Dillon will probably get his fair share.
I was actually a couple hours before I did this show tonight, I was on the Fantasy Alarm show with Howard Bender and Jim Bowden. We were talking about the FFPC Playoff Challenge. And, Howard's like, you can't play in this, but if you could, who's the one guy you got to have on your roster? And I was like, well, we don't know all the teams in the playoffs yet, but I'll tell you this. There's going to be a ton of Aaron Rodgers teams. There's going to be a ton of Devontae Adams teams in this. But then I look at a guy like A.J. Dillon, who might be more the 1A than the 1B running back with Green Bay, having what we think is probably going to be home field advantage throughout the playoffs, playing in cold Lambeau. I don't know. I think there's something to be said for that, and there definitely is something to be said for him going up against the Vikings this week, a Vikings defense that's been underperforming. I'm totally starting Dillon in the positive game strip over Michael Carter. Bobby, the next email we have for you is in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, yes. It's Marshall who writes, hey, Bobby, was there anything you did differently in fantasy football drafting, bidding, and lineup setting this season that you didn't do in years past? How did you find so much success from just two teams in 2021? That is Marshall in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. Marshall, appreciate you listening and emailing as well. Bobby, I don't know if there's an easy answer to this question. Do you feel like you did a lot of the same things you always did and it just worked out better for you this year, or did you do something differently, tactically speaking?
I definitely did. I definitely had a similar pick in the draft, and when I had players kind of circled that if they were there, if you look at my team, a lot of them, it's the Stafford, Cup, Andrews, either like Diggs or Hill. I definitely had I had a lot of similarities. So this year it just worked out in the draft. So it's either kind of like an all or not type of year. Like if you're going to be picking the same types of guys, the same guys, well, my two teams are within 5 points of each other. So it doesn't work out that way for nothing. So a lot of it, there's definitely a lot of crossover. And I was definitely a little more aggressive on the bidding. Just trying to bid up and use as much. I think a lot of people don't really realize when it's when the week that it's over and they have a bunch of dollars left, just trying to liquidate and get as much as you can out of that, which is why I took a couple of defenses just to get rid of guys that were on IR and just, dash them off and pick up a couple of defenses.
Hey,
Bobby, my question is, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just real quick, Farrell. I just want to drive this point home. So two-part question. Number one, Bobby, when you said you were more aggressive on the waiver wire, was there any particular player or a big difference maker that you actually purchased off the waiver wire that really helped you get to where you are? And the second part of that, between your 5th place and your 7th place team, you said there's a lot of crossover. Is there enough differentiation there where you can, increase the variance one way or the other to try to push one of those teams up to the top?
Yeah, there's definitely enough. Actually, Chase Edmonds is another guy that's on both sides. So, Aaron Jones on one, and then I have Jonathan Taylor on the other. I have Cooks, and then there's Diggs on the other. Tyreek Hill on the one, and let's see, Debo on the other one. So like, there's some differences, but they're like the core players are definitely the same. I mean, listen, that Rex Burkhead brainchild was a waiver wire pickup. So that and the Pat Freiermuth and getting some of those tight ends early is always the best thing to do. Where if you see some promise, you want to try to nab them up pretty quick. And Freiermuth was really good until he got hurt. He scored a touchdown in like almost every day. I think he had 8 touchdowns this year.
I'm adding on my list of team names for next year. The Rex Burkhead brainchild is going to be one of my team names next year. So thank you for that, Bobby. Farrell, I'll kick it over to you for your question here.
My question is the same every week, and this. But I think the second part of it has, especially in these days of COVID, is much, much more important. And, so what we want to look at, we want to look at studs. We'd like a stud from you that you think is going to fail this week. We're talking about how players are going to elevate your lineup. And it seems like everyone that you just mentioned has some really great matchups, too. So congratulations for that. But, perhaps the Philadelphia, I don't know. I don't want to lead you into the question, but is there a stud that you just think is going to be a disappointment and you would be avoiding him if he was on your roster? And the second part of it, which is even more important because of the availability of COVID, who's that sleeper out there? Who's this week's Burkhead?
This week's Burkhead. I don't know if anyone can answer that question. There's no one like Rex Burkhead. I'm going to say,
oh my goodness, we stumped the New Yorker. We have stumped the guy from Manhattan. So I saw this in a Woody Allen movie once. The guy from Manhattan got stumped. It's amazing. It hardly ever happens.
I think in the kind of the ground and pound Green Bay, I'm not going to say that I think Aaron Jones is not going to do well, but I also think like Dylan is probably going to be like the bell cow there. And is Kelsey officially off COVID list?
I believe he is. Yes, I believe he is.
Okay. If he's come off and he's had some time, then I'm sure he'll be good. But I'm interested to see, like you said about Brandon Cooks. It was very clear that Tyreek Hill, was not himself. And if anybody who's coming off that list, say tomorrow or Saturday, you can't think that they're going to be at full speed. So I can't tell you any names, but if there's any big-time guys who are going to get back and they're going to come back either tomorrow or the day after, then you might be a little wary of playing them because they're not going to be, full of gas.
Lower expectations and exercise caution, no doubt. Final question we have for you, Bobby. What are the plans for Week 17? The action is going to go, basically from 1 in the afternoon till roughly 11 o'clock at night Sunday, and then the Browns and Steelers get it on Monday night. Your thoughts on what you're going to be doing watching those games? Are you going to watch the games? And who are you going to be watching those games with?
Well, my beautiful, beautiful wife for Christmas got us tickets to Rams-Ravens. And,
nice!
Because I'm a Rams guy, because of Stafford, so we are going to be in Baltimore for that game. So that is, I can think of half my points are in that game, and I'm emotionally invested. So that's where we're going to be. We're taking it all in.
So then, when that game, the Baltimore Rams game. That is a late game. Are you just going to go back to the hotel and take in the Vikings-Packers game and And then Monday night, are you going to be tucked in safely in NYC watching the game, or what are your plans then?
They flexed the Ravens-Rams as a 1 o'clock game now.
Oh, it's a 1 o'clock, so then you can watch all afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I don't know if there's a better day than that. And
Yeah.
you know what would be the best thing? If that day ended with me in the lead by 90 points and Chase Claypool being my guy on Monday night to bring it home.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it. Bobby Heytota has been our guest tonight, the owner of the 5th and 7th place teams in the Football Guys Players Championship, coming up on championship week. Man, listen, an incredible, wonderful season for you already to get your only 2 teams up into the top 7 overall in a competition that featured 13,000 plus. Congratulations. We are not worthy. I hope nothing but the best for you. I'm pulling for you. I hope it happens this weekend for you. And listen, next year you should have some extra coin that you've made from these 2 teams. Why don't you get a few more teams next year, and you might have 3 in the top 10 or 4 in the top 10 coming up on championship week. Certainly. Yes, you got to build, expand your territory, as Farrell always likes to say. Bobby, thank you so much. Enjoy your Thursday. A happy New Year to you, and enjoy that Rams-Ravens game on Sunday, dude.
Thank you, guys. Have a nice New Year's.
See you,
Thank
Bobby.
you so much. That's
Yeah.
Bobby Heytota. Thank you for doing the show. Appreciate it, dude. The owner of the 5th and 7th place teams in the Football Guys Players Championship. Farrell, what a roller coaster it's been for him to only have 2 teams overall in high-stakes fantasy football this year, to get them both into the championship round, to get one of them all the way to leading the whole thing coming into week 16, and now to have 2 in the top 7 coming into week 17. I don't think he is Joe Cool and Joe Chill or whatever. I would not be handling it as well as he is. He seems very well put together. I'd be all over the place, nervous and frazzled.
Yeah, he is well put together, and he put his teams well together, too. He drafted good players. They've remained healthy. That's been a big part of it. He's gone in the waiver wire. He's done some right things. And when you draft 2 teams, your attention and your focus is impressive. I'm all about expanding the territory as time allows you to expand the territory to fill up what you have available to give to fantasy football. We all love drafting, but we all have to equally love managing the teams. With 2 teams, he's been very focused, and he wants to talk a lot about lineups. He's not talking as much about acquisitions as he is the right players to start at the right time. And I really was impressed by your journalistic acumen there, Balky, as he and the missus go off to the romance capital of the eastern United States, Baltimore, Maryland, and, you were asking him what he had planned. Look, if we can get him to Baltimore to go see the Rams, we can probably get him to Kentucky to draft fantasy football, KFMSC style. So I'll have to follow up that with it. He's a very intriguing guy and the kind of guy that's good for the game. I hope he continues to win, as I'm sure all these guys that are in this top group, have put together a great season and deserves a win. But he's got some special reasons he wants to win. That makes it kind of nice.
Yeah, and playing in honor of his late father-in-law, and obviously the team he used to co-own with him and still co-owns with in spirit, essentially. So rooting for him there. One other thing I forgot to mention too, and I should have mentioned when Bobby was still on the line, but when he and I were exchanging emails and we were setting up this interview, he said, this is going to be fun. I can't wait. One question: is it okay if I curse on air? And I said, well, listen, I never say to a guest, hey, you can't say this or you can't say that. But I will say that if at all possible, please refrain from that. And it's so funny because earlier this week I got an email, or I should say Rob got an email from YouTube saying that our content, after being on there for almost a decade, they've now deemed it not suitable for people under the age 18. And so somebody must have been cutting loose some expletives on the show. And so the fact that Bobby held his tongue tonight is really good for our YouTube channel and that we don't get any further strikes. So that was great to hear from him tonight. All right. So we want to do some emails. We'll get to, because we only got a couple of minutes. Okay. So let's go rapid fire on these best we can. Farrell, Terry in Sacramento. I thought I was going to roll out Kirk Cousins in championship week, but I grabbed Trey Lance tonight. Which guy would you guys start? Thanks so much. That's Terry in Sacramento. I like Kirk Cousins this week. I quite frankly, I like most of the Vikings offensive players against the Green Bay defense that has not looked very good as of late. I like Cook. I like Jefferson. I like Cousins. To me, in championship week, as much as I think Trey Lance has the better upside, I want to go with Kirk Cousins because I think he could easily just put up 300 yards and 3 touchdowns as well.
Easily is what you should do, top 12 fantasy quarterback. Release your grip on Trey Lance.
Let's go with Mike in Houston. Am I doing the unthinkable this week? Playing Rashad Penny over Saquon Barkley. Thank you for the email, Mike. It's not unthinkable because I would be thinking about it. Saquon Barkley is having his reps managed by the Giants this week. I know Rashad Penny let a lot of people down last week, but I think you could make the case to start Penny against the Lions in Seattle over Saquon Barkley this week, Farrell. Am I being too brazen? Am I being too bold? Or is Barkley a guy that you have to sit?
No, Penny's exactly what Seattle needs and exactly what's been working. 311 yards in the last 3 games, Balky. Saquon couldn't get that yardage if Booker was carrying him.
John in Memphis, dear Balky and Farrell. First off, thanks for your advice this season. Because of you guys, I got through my regular season undefeated and am playing the 2 seed for the title this week. My lineup sort of sets itself except for my flex. Would you guys play Devontae Smith or Brandon Ayuk? Thanks again. You have a listener for life. That is John in Memphis. John, thank you for the extremely kind words. We certainly appreciate it. Yeah, this is an interesting decision he's got to make, and I'm assuming full PPR here. But when you look at this situation this week, Devontae Smith, who's in our nation's capital, taking on the football team, and then you look at Brandon Ayuk, again, probably catching passes from Trey Lance, it looks like, but Brandon Ayuk against the Texans. Again, too much of the unknown for me. I trust the Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith connection. I'm going to go with him and say Smith over Ayuk, Farrell.
Easy decision. Smith found the end zone last week against the Giants. He is the number 1 target and the number 1 receiver for this Philadelphia team, a team that gets to play a defense that just gave up 56 points. Devontae Smith is your man.
All right, and final, I think we have one final email here, if I'm reading this correctly. Yes, we do. Lee in Idaho Falls, Idaho. Happy New Year, HSFF honchos. I can only fit one of these guys into my football guys lineup this week. I'm a ways down in the overall standings, but I want to finish as best I can. Is Jared Cook or Tyler Higbee the correct call in Week 17? Lee, congratulations in your FPC performance this year. Good luck in Week 17, and thanks for the email. The situation that he is looking at here, Farrell, for tight ends, he must have an elite one, and he's considering flexing out one of these guys because Higbee and Cook aren't great tight end 1 starts. Higbee, obviously, we just heard from Bobby. He's going to be in Baltimore. And then Jared Cook at home against the Broncos. I don't have a strong feeling either way on this. I guess my inkling is towards Higbee, but I can be persuaded.
Mm-hmm. Don't be persuaded. Cook is beginning to appear to me that Father Time has caught up somewhat with him. I don't know if he's banged up. I don't know what the situation is, but he's having some concentration issues for the first time. We're seeing Cook drop balls. We're seeing him not really make some of the efforts within what was his normal passing window to elevate and catch the ball. He doesn't look like the same Jared Cook that he's looked like the past 2 or 3 years. When he basically could hide inside that offense and be the last target in the route in the progressions from the quarterback, usually be open. It's not that situation right now. They need more from this player. They're not getting it. Tyler Higbee is beginning to warm up, and against Baltimore, with the type of pass rush they have and the fact that they're oftentimes dropping those linebackers, Higbee should find the middle to his liking, bringing our guest's favorite quarterback into an opportunity hitting 5 or 6 times, which means big numbers in the FFPC at 1.5.
Yeah. And it will be, especially if you're flexing out Higbee. Maybe he could be a big-time difference maker in Week 17. We shall see. Good football analysis from Farrell Elliott there, and great fantasy football analysis all episode long from the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Farrell, thank you so much for hopping aboard with me on a Thursday night. My beloved Wisconsin Badgers are off and running in the Las Vegas Bowl. I got to sign off on the show so I can take in the rest of this game and stay up till God knows what hour tonight to watch this. Farrell, thanks so much. Happy New Year to you. We'll check out the KFFSC at kffsc.com. Be good, and we'll do this again. We'll be back on our Friday schedule next week, dude.
Good luck, everyone. We'll be talking about all the champs next Friday night.
You know it. And we will talk then with Farrell Elliott, the commissioner of the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. Completes our programming for you this evening, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank Bobby Heytota. I want to thank Farrell Elliott and, of course, the FFPC, Rob Bryce, and each and every one of you for hanging out on a Thursday, especially Kern Reeve, who is hanging out in the chat room still with his 6th, 20th, and 60th place teams in the FFPC main event, hoping that you can turn that into a big windfall, my friend. RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown with Ken Ford is live. RotoViz.com/podcast is where you can check that out there. Like I just told Farrell, we did a Wednesday show last week. We did a Thursday show this week. We'll do a Friday show next week, and Friday's going forward to get back on our normal schedule at 10/9 Central. Remember to check out those FFPC and Football Guys playoff challenges at myffpc.com. Win $500,000, win a $100,000 grand prize for just $35 as well. Happy New Year to everybody, and I hope the ball bounces your way in championship week. Bring home those ships. Your first weekend of 2022.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, presented by myffpc.com. It was broadcast live and heard around the world. Balky and Farrell will be back next week with more analysis, interviews, and advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk with you again next week.
You know, Farrell mentioned it there too, that, you know, starting next week, we're going to have some champions on, right? We're going to have people who won the main event, the Football Guys Players Championship, Super Bracket, Terminator, Best Ball Tournament, you know, all these different events. And, you know, certainly that's a great accomplishment to win. But understand this, if you are listening to High Stakes Fantasy Football podcasts on December 30th or late in December every year because you want to make sure you're starting the right players, picking up the right players, what have you, you've already kind of won. You know, the fact that you're playing at this level and you're still in competition, you're coming up on week 17, pat yourself on the back, win or lose, you've accomplished a lot. And it's what makes it fun. It's supposed to be fun. And this is why we keep doing it every single week. And every single year. I can't wait to talk to the champions, and I can't wait to learn from them coming up. I hope you are excited to do the same. And I hope you're excited to start drafting with the FFPC coming up in just a few weeks here in January. It's going to be quite the ride just as we end a new year and a new season begins. Thanks so much for listening. Happy New Year, everybody.